"Ma'am, maybe you should stick to cleaning rifles instead of giving shooting advice." Corporal Jackson's smirk was wide as he turned to his buddies at the range. The 40-year-old woman behind the armory counter didn't react. Rachel Martinez simply continued organizing ammunition, her weathered hands moving with practiced efficiency. She'd heard worse from Marines half her age who thought they knew everything about weapons. But when Jackson's rifle kept jamming during qualification, and he blamed the equipment, Rachel finally looked up. "Want me to show you how it's really done?" The words were quiet, almost conversational. Jackson laughed. He shouldn't have. The desert sun hammered the concrete of Camp Pendleton as another scorching California day began. Inside the base armory, fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across rows of weapons racks and ammunition storage. The smell of gun oil and metal polish hung in the air like an old friend's cologne. Rachel Martinez moved through her morning routine with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this exact job for 3 years. At 40, she'd become part of the furniture at the armory, reliable, competent, and largely invisible to the young Marines who cycled through for equipment and ammunition. Her graying brown hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her hands, weathered by sun and scarred by years of weapon handling, sorted rifle parts with unconscious expertise. To most people, she was just another technician, someone who cleaned weapons, ordered parts, and maintained inventory logs. The kind of person you barely noticed unless something was broken and needed fixing. The young Marines who came through her doors saw her as a necessary service provider, like the woman who served food in the chow hall or the clerk who processed their paperwork. Functional, forgettable, safe to ignore. What they didn't see were the calluses in specific places on her hands, not from cleaning weapons, but from firing them. Thousands of rounds over countless hours on ranges they'd never heard of. They didn't notice how her eyes automatically swept the space, checking exits, assessing threats, reading the tactical situation. They missed the fact that her posture, straight shoulders, balanced weight distribution, muscles ready to move, was the product of years of combat training. Rachel Martinez wasn't just a gun technician. She was one of the deadliest snipers in Marine Corps history. And today, thanks to young, cocky Corporal Jackson's mistake, that truth was about to see daylight. The morning had started like any other. Rachel arrived at 6:30, 30 minutes before the armory officially opened, because she preferred the quiet time to organize and prepare. Her routine was sacred. Check the overnight log, inspect returned equipment, verify ammunition counts, and prepare the day's issue sheets. Everything had its place. Everything followed protocol. It was the kind of orderly, predictable work that helped keep other thoughts at bay. She'd been doing this job for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that she was counting. The transition from her previous life had been difficult. Going from the hypervigilance and constant adrenaline of combat operations to the mundane rhythm of equipment maintenance was like switching from a Formula One race car to a bicycle. But it was what she needed, what the doctors had recommended, what the Corps had agreed to when they'd quietly moved her to this position. The young Marines reminded her of herself at that age, cocky, confident, certain they knew everything. Iraq and Afghanistan had taught her differently. As the morning progressed, the armory found its usual rhythm. Young Marines came and went, picking up equipment, selecting cleaning supplies, and signing for ammunition. Rachel interacted minimally, efficient, polite, distant. She wasn't respected for her age or acknowledged for her expertise. She was invisible. The change in atmosphere was subtle at first. A little too much laughter from the group near the M4 racks, whispered comments that weren't quite quiet enough, glances in her direction followed by smirks. Rachel had developed a thick skin over the years, but today, something felt different, more pointed, more personal. Henderson approached with swagger. "Hey lady, we need cleaning kits, the good ones. Not junk." Rachel looked up. "All kits meet Marine Corps standards. If you're having maintenance problems, perhaps you need training." Henderson's friend snickered. "Training? From you? Have you ever fired a weapon outside Basic E?" Rachel returned to paperwork. "Equipment is issued by availability. Submit requests through command. Professional advice from the supply lady." Henderson laughed, but it was when Corporal Jackson arrived that things really escalated. Jackson was confident, naturally good at everything. expert rifle scores, maxed PFT, recommended for advanced training. His fellow Marines looked up to him. "Morning, ma'am," he said to Rachel, the politeness barely concealing condescension. "We need 6 M4s and ammunition for qualification. Working ones this time, if you don't mind." His buddies laughed, as if this was a particularly clever comment. Rachel didn't look up. "How many rounds per weapon?" 120 each, and I hope these don't jam like the last batch. Maybe you should get someone who knows weapons to check them before issuing them out." Rachel silently prepared the equipment. She checked each rifle, tested the mechanisms, counted the ammunition. As her hands moved over the weapons, muscle memory kicked in. Thousands of hours of training, countless tests, the brutal months at Quantico's Scout Sniper School that had forged her into something most people couldn't imagine. The M4A1 was more than equipment to Rachel. It was an extension of will, a precision instrument from 7 deployments across 3 continents. She knew its weight, balance, temperament. She could field strip it blindfolded, under fire. She could make it sing at distances these Marines couldn't imagine. "If you're having problems with these rifles," she said finally, keeping her voice low, "the issue probably isn't with the equipment." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" "The best weapon is useless in the wrong hands," Rachel replied, sliding the clipboard toward him for signature. Jackson's face flushed red. "Listen, lady, I've been shooting these rifles longer than you've been working in this job. Maybe you should stick to cleaning guns instead of giving advice about using them." Late that afternoon, Jackson and his team went to the range for qualification. Rachel could hear the distant gunfire from the armory as she finished her paperwork. Regular, rhythmic, routine. Then the shots stopped. Then came the frustrated shouting. 15 minutes later, Jackson returned, his face red and clearly agitated. He slammed the rifle down on Rachel's counter. "This thing keeps jamming," he said. "Every 5 rounds. I need to try a different one." Rachel examined the weapon. Standard M4A1, manufactured by Colt, had entered service just last month. She picked it up, checked the mechanism, looked down the barrel, tested the trigger group. Everything was in perfect working order. "There's nothing wrong with this rifle," she said. "Then why does it keep jamming?" Jackson's voice was rising, drawing attention from other Marines returning from the range. Rachel continued her examination. She noticed slight wear marks on the magazine well, typical signs of improper loading technique. There were fingerprint smudges on the trigger guard, indicating too much pressure being applied. The weapon wasn't the problem. The person using it was. "Maybe the issue is with technique," she said diplomatically. Jackson's buddies gathered around, starting to enjoy the situation. "I think the lady's trying to teach you how to shoot, Jackson," one teased. "Ha!" Jackson laughed. "Have we ever seen you fire anything? This is just paperwork and cleaning, right, lady? Real warriors are out on the line doing the actual work." Rachel paused for a moment. Countless similar moments flashed through her mind. Every time she'd had to prove herself, every situation where she'd been judged for her age, gender, or appearance. Usually she stayed quiet, did her job, and moved on. But this time, something was different. Maybe it was Jackson's arrogance, maybe it was his friend's laughter, or maybe she'd finally realized she had nothing left to prove to anyone. "Want me to show you how it's really done?" she asked, her voice calm and conversational. Jackson laughed, loud, dismissive. "You? Are you serious?" "Dead serious." The word choice wasn't accidental. Rachel picked up the rifle and walked out of the armory. Jackson and his friends followed her, joking among themselves and placing bets. Word spread quickly, and within minutes, a dozen Marines had gathered around the range to witness the gun technician's shooting demonstration. Rangemaster Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez observed the situation. A veteran Marine himself, Rodriguez had worked with Rachel for 3 years and knew her as quiet, competent, and never one to cause trouble. This display was completely out of character for her. "Martinez, what are you doing?" he asked. "Just an equipment test, Gunny," Rachel replied. "Corporal Jackson claims this rifle isn't functioning properly. I want to verify." Rodriguez hesitated. He could see the growing crowd of onlookers. This was the kind of situation that could get out of hand fast. But Rachel's record was spotless, and technically, testing equipment was part of her job. "All right," he said. "But by the book, safety protocols, and keep the spectators at a safe distance." Rachel nodded. She pulled hearing protection from her gear bag, checked the rifle, and walked to the firing line. Her movement had changed, more fluid, more precise. The civilian technician was gone, replaced by something professional and dangerous. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Her stride lengthened, her shoulders squared, her head came up with the predatory alertness of someone who'd spent years hunting the most dangerous game of all, other Marines. The young Marines watching didn't understand what they were seeing, but some of the older NCOs began to take notice. Staff Sergeant Williams, who'd been supervising another group nearby, stopped what he was doing and moved closer. Something about Martinez's movement, her bearing, the way she handled the weapon triggered recognition in his combat-experienced mind. "Gunny," Williams said quietly to Rodriguez, "does Martinez have a military background?" "She's been working the armory for 3 years," Rodriguez replied, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. "Why? Watch how she moves." Rachel selected the 100-meter target, standard distance for qualification. Jackson and his friends commented that this was an easy target. Rachel seemed not to hear them. She took stance, feet shoulder-width apart, weight distributed, body angled toward target. Shouldered the rifle, cheek to stock, aligned sights. Every movement fluid, automatic, ingrained. There was something else these Marines couldn't see. Rachel accessed experience including shots under impossible conditions. Targets that shot back, distances in kilometers, wind that could knock down a man, pressure meaning life or death. "Come on, lady," Jackson called out. "Let's see what you've got." Rachel breathed in, exhaled half, settled. Trigger control would be precise and deliberate. Her finger felt the cold metal. Heart rate slowed, the world narrowed. The first fundamental of marksmanship, sight alignment. The front sight, post centered in the rear sight aperture, target clearly visible. Everything else, the crowd, the comments, the pressure, faded away. The second fundamental, sight picture. The relationship between the aligned sights and the point of aim on the target. Rachel's sight picture was steady, unwavering, perfect. The third fundamental, breathing. Natural respiratory pause, the moment between exhale and inhale when the body is most stable. The fourth fundamental, trigger control. Straight back, smooth pressure, surprise break. Crack, first shot, dead center. The laughter began to fade. Rachel loaded her second round. Same ritual, breath settle, focus. Crack. Second shot, touching the first 1 millimeter from center. Nobody was laughing now. "Lucky shots," Jackson muttered, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Rachel prepared for her third shot. This time, she changed targets. 200 meters. Jackson's eyes widened. "Hey, wait a minute." Crack. Third shot. Center ring at 200 meters. Rodriguez walked onto the range, assessing the situation. He could see that something was going very wrong, or very right. Rachel's stance, her breathing control, her trigger discipline. These weren't the movements of a hobby shooter. "Martinez," he said carefully, "how much experience do you have?" Rachel loaded her fourth round. "Enough, Gunny. Try 300. The crowd continued to grow. Marines from other units, officers who'd heard about the situation, even some visiting personnel from other bases. The range, normally used only for routine training, had suddenly become a theater. Rachel focused on the 300-meter target. This distance required serious marksmanship. Wind factor, bullet drop, precision, all had to be accounted for. She adjusted her position, observed the wind, read the indicators on the target, breathed in, crack. 300 meters, dead center. The crowd fell silent. This wasn't luck anymore. This was skill. "Holy shit," someone whispered. Jackson's face had gone pale. This is impossible. She's just a technician." Rodriguez moved closer. "Martinez, tell me the truth. Who are you really?" Rachel loaded her fifth round. "Just someone doing her job, Gunny." "How old are you?" 40. "And how long have you been shooting?" Rachel paused for a moment. 22 years. Rodriguez did the math. She would have started at 18. That pointed directly to the Marines, and this skill level. "What was your MOS, military occupational specialty?" 0317, Rachel said quietly. Rodriguez's blood ran cold. 0317, scout sniper, the Marine Corps' elite marksman. But there was more. As Rachel prepared for her next shot, Staff Sergeant Williams approached Rodriguez with a printout he'd retrieved from the range office. "Gunny, I looked up 317S who might match her profile. Female, approximate age, timeline." He handed over the paper. "There's only one who fits." Rodriguez looked at the paper and felt the world shift slightly. There, in black and white, was a service record that read like a legend. Rachel Martinez, call sign Ghost, Scout Sniper, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, 7 deployments, 127 confirmed kills. Longest confirmed shot, 1,367 meters. "Jesus Christ," Rodriguez breathed. "Everyone back," Rodriguez shouted. "Now!" The young Marine stepped back in confusion. Rodriguez approached Rachel, his voice low but urgent. "You're Ghost." "Used to be," Rachel replied. "When?" 1998 to 2015. Rodriguez quickly calculated. 17 years of active service. That would have taken her through Iraq, Afghanistan, maybe less publicized operations. And she was still only 40, so she really had started at 18. "What was your call?" Rachel loaded her 6th round. This time she selected 400 meters. The crowd held its breath. "Ghost!" Crack. Perfect hit at 400 meters. Rodriguez's hands trembled. "You're the Ghost? From the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines?" Rachel prepared her 7th round. "You know me." "Know you." "Damn, you're a legend in Fallujah. Stories in Ramadi." You broke records." Jackson and his friends were hearing this conversation but couldn't understand it. To them, these were just names and places. But Rodriguez knew. He was a veteran too. "What record?" Jackson asked boldly. Rodriguez turned to him, his face showing a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Longest confirmed kill record, 1,367 meters, 1 shot, 1 kill. And not just that, most confirmed kills too. Never officially released, but the legend said 127 inches. The number hit the crowd like a physical blow. 127 confirmed kills meant 127 enemy combatants who would never threaten American forces again. 127 perfect shots taken under combat conditions. 127 moments when Rachel Martinez had looked through a scope and made a decision that saved countless American lives. Staff Sergeant Williams stepped forward. "Ghost, I served with 1st Battalion in Fallujah. We heard stories about you. The angel sniper who watched over convoys, the phantom who eliminated threats before we even knew they existed." Rachel didn't respond, but something in her expression softened slightly. Recognition from fellow veterans meant more than praise from civilians ever could. Rachel loaded her 8th round. This time, she selected the range's furthest target, 600 meters. At this distance, most Marines would struggle. Even experienced marksmen would find it challenging. "Ghost," Rodriguez said, his voice filled with respect. "You don't have to do this." "I know," Rachel replied, "but there's no point in hiding anymore." She took position. 600 meters was serious distance. Wind factor, bullet drop, mirage effect, everything mattered. But Rachel could make these shots in her sleep. She breathed, settled, focused. At 600 meters, the target was barely a speck. Most shooters would need a spotting scope just to see where their shots were hitting. Rachel was aiming with iron sights, relying on experience and instinct, built over thousands of hours of practice. Crack. 600 meters, dead center. The crowd released a collective, "Ooh!" "This is impossible," Jackson whispered. "Not impossible," Rodriguez replied. "You're just watching a legend at work." Rachel prepared her 9th round. She wasn't showing off now. This was for old time's sake, a chance to demonstrate her full capability one more time. 700 meters, she announced. Rodriguez nodded. "Wind's picking up, about 5 to 7 miles per hour from the left." Rachel nodded. She'd felt the wind, made her calculation. The mathematics of long-range shooting are complex. Wind speed and direction, air temperature, humidity, altitude, the rotation of the Earth itself, all factors that affect a bullet's flight path. At 700 meters, these variables become critical. A small error in calculation means a complete miss. But Rachel Martinez had been making these calculations instinctively for over 2 decades. Her brain processed the environmental factors automatically, adjusting her aim point to compensate for conditions that would confuse lesser shooters. Crack! 700 meters, center hit. Complete silence now, just the sound of Rachel's bullets striking their targets. "One more," Rachel said. 800 meters. Rodriguez blinked. "Rachel, at that distance the target's barely visible." "I don't need to see it," Rachel replied. "I know it's there." She loaded her 10th and final round. At the far end of the range was a target, 800 meters. Most Marines would have trouble seeing that distance with binoculars. Rachel was aiming with the naked eye. The crowd had grown to 40 to 50 people now. There was electricity in the air. Everyone knew this shot was impossible. But then again, everything she'd done so far had been impossible. 800 meters represented more than just distance. At that range, the bullet would take over a second to reach the target. Environmental factors would have maximum effect. The margin for error was essentially zero. Rachel took her final position. This shot wasn't just about skill. It was about the complete revelation of who she was, what she could do, why she'd earned the call sign Ghost. Every sound in the world faded away. Wind, heartbeat, breathing. Just her and the target 800 meters away. In her mind, she wasn't on a peaceful California training range. She was back in the mountains of Afghanistan, in a hide site overlooking a valley where American forces were pinned down by enemy fire. The shot mattered. Lives depended on it. Failure wasn't an option. She breathed, settled, squeezed, crack. Seconds of silence. Then someone with binoculars shouted, "Dead center! Holy shit, dead center!" Aftermath and explanations. The crowd erupted. Applause, shouts, expressions of disbelief. Jackson and his friends stood in shock, not knowing what to say. Rachel safed the weapon and handed it back to Jackson. "Nothing wrong with the rifle," she said calmly. "Just needs to be in the right hands." Jackson took the weapon but couldn't speak. Just hours ago, he'd been dismissing this woman, trying to give her advice about firearms. Now he'd learned she was one of the world's best shooters. I didn't know," he stammered. "You didn't need to know," Rachel replied. "But maybe you should ask before you judge." Rodriguez approached. "Ghost, why are you here working as an armory technician? I mean, with your skills?" Rachel shrugged. "The war's over. So am I, but I still love the weapons, cleaning them, teaching about them, in a peaceful way. But why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because the past should stay in the past. I'm just Rachel now, the technician, or I was." Rodriguez smiled. "I don't think you are anymore." The transformation was complete. Word would spread across the base within hours. The quiet armory technician was actually one of the most famous snipers in Marine Corps history. Nothing would ever be the same. But in a way, that was okay. Rachel had spent 3 years hiding from who she used to be, trying to leave the war behind. Maybe it was time to stop running from her past and start integrating it with her present. The next day, news had spread throughout the base. Everyone knew that the quiet technician in the armory was actually one of the most renowned snipers in Marine Corps history. When Rachel returned to her usual routine, the treatment had changed. Young Marines now saw her differently. There was respect, but not from fear, from genuine admiration. They asked questions, polite, curious questions, about techniques, about training, about improving their marksmanship. Jackson came in that morning with a very different attitude. Ghost, ma'am, he started, stumbling over his words. "Rachel's fine," she said with a smile. "Rachel, I thought about it last night and I want to apologize. How I treated you, what I said, I was completely disrespectful." "Apology accepted," Rachel replied. "But learn from this. Never judge a book by its cover, and never assume what someone can do based on how they look." "Would you teach me?" Jackson asked hopefully. To be a better marksman?" Rachel considered this. She hadn't taught anyone to shoot in years, but maybe it was time to give back. "Saturday morning, 0600, be at the range. And Jackson?" "Yes, ma'am." "This time, be ready to listen." The request didn't surprise her. Over the following weeks, more Marines approached her for instruction. Word spread that Ghost was willing to share her knowledge, and soon Rachel found herself conducting informal marksmanship clinics during her off hours. It wasn't official training. That would require going through proper channels and paperwork. But these were educational sessions, opportunities for experienced Marines to learn from one of the best shooters the Corps had ever produced. The base commander, Colonel Hayes, eventually caught wind of what was happening. Instead of shutting it down, he regularized it. Rachel was given additional duties as a marksmanship instructor, working with Marines who needed extra help qualifying or who showed exceptional promise. 6 months later, Rachel stood on the same range where she'd revealed her identity. This time, she wasn't alone. A dozen Marines worked under her instruction. "Breathing is fundamental," she called out. "Sergeant Collins, natural respiratory pause, not breath holding." Colonel Hayes appeared beside her. "How's our progress?" "Good, sir. Collins improved 40 points. Henderson hits expert consistently. Jackson's ready for advanced training." "And you?" "Teaching is just another form of service, sir." Jackson approached after training. "Ghost, Rachel, I qualified expert last week. First time, 337 out of 340. Not bad," Rachel smiled, "because of what you taught me. Things I thought I knew but didn't understand. You had the foundation, just needed proper building. Do you miss it? The deployments, being Ghost?" Rachel watched the sunset. "I miss the Marines I served with. I miss the clarity, but not the killing. I'm glad those days are behind me. You're still serving, in a better way. Instead of taking life, I'm preserving it by training Marines to protect themselves and their brothers." As Jackson left, Rachel remained on the quiet range. She thought about her journey, from 18-year-old recruit to deadly sniper to hidden technician to teacher. A long road marked by loss and pain, but maybe leading somewhere worthwhile after all. Have you ever been underestimated because of your experience or appearance? Did this story of hidden strength carried quietly give you hope that age is just a number and real power is carried silently? Share your own stories in the comments. Each of us has more than meets the eye. If stories like this move you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every week we bring you new stories that reveal hidden heroes and their shocking truths. And remember, everyone carries a story. Often the most powerful ones are lived most quietly. See you in our next video. Thank you for your time with Hidden Heroes Stories.